Let's talk about setting up the Economizer minimum position. As you know, this is a variable speed machine, and you can't have one position to satisfy the machine at all times. So similar to two-speed machines and other things like that, you have to set multiple points to be able to get the ventilation to occur all the time, properly. System view in general, regardless of variable speed, allows you to set in an actual curve for various operating positions. And this is what we'll walk you through. So settings, unit config, and then Economizer, and then minimum position. So here's the different minimum positions. So it's important to note, by default, the machine may be shipped and likely shipped to provide more outside air than what you really need. So it is highly recommended that you go in and set these. Otherwise, you may be bringing in more outside air than you need, and you really should be done properly with an air balancer to know that you're actually getting the right amount of air. So in this case, you can see it says minimum position at max fan 18%. And as you know, what's max fan? Well, we talked about that in another video, which is the fan setup. That max fan is 100% by default. In general, if you have a machine that hasn't been really touched, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your max fan speed is set how you want it for that unit. So if it's default 100% and you're still good with that, then leave it at that. And so the first thing you want to do is, well, if I am running 100% fan, what do I want my damper to be? So in an ideal situation, you would have an airflow monitor to measure the actual amount of outside air that's getting put in the space. And in that case, go to use test mode, and you would drive your fan to 100%. And then you would move the damper to whatever position you need to get the outside air you want. And then you would put that number in here. And then once you have that position squared away, then you would change in test mode, change your fan speed to something less. And at minimum, you need to do one more speed and one more damper position besides the maximum fan with this min pos at max. So you have to have 2 points for a calibration to be a line. It would be a linear line, then the algorithm would scale the fan and the damper. As the fan's moving up, the damper would scale based on that linear line. If you want to customize and really get it to drive home, then you can add additional points. So speed 2, damp 2, right? Speed 3, damp 3. And so this gives you a total of 3 customizable speeds or points of the curve plus the maximum one. So that's a 4-point total curve equation that we will save and control the fan to. If you plan on only setting up 2 positions for this linear curve ventilation, then you have to use the maximum fan speed and then the min position setting at that speed. But when you're dialing in speed 1 and position 1, it's ideal to use speed 1 as equivalent to your ventilation speed so that you are ventilating properly during that mode. And that usually is going to be probably your lowest fan speed of the machine anyways. For our purposes, let's just go through and say, minimum position at max is 18%. Let's say that worked out good. Our maximum is 100, and we got to put in one more point for this site. So we're going to say at speed, and if you wanted to do the math, you could go through and say, let's say my lowest point fan speed is 30% ever. And so 30% fan speed, and then my damper, what would that be at this point? Well, we know that 18% at 100%, so if we drop to 30, we're going to have to crank that damper up. You would use test mode with an air balancer to really find this out, but let's just go through and say it's something around 60%. For my purposes, I'm making up numbers, but you guys would really be moving the damper via test mode. You'd be in here, you'd go to independent, you'd go to damper, and you'd start cranking that up to some position while your fan speed was at whatever. So you're going to dial in the fan speed, and then you're going to play with the damper to get you to where you have enough outside air. Once you have that, again, you go to menu, settings, unit configs, econ, min position, and then you're going to fill in those points once you have it. If you have a scrap piece of paper or something like that, go through the test mode, run the points that you want, record those points, write them down, and then come back to this menu and dial them in. Again, you have to do at least 2 points. So it's the min at max fan point and speed 1 and damp 1. You have to set those 3, and that's going to give you a nice linear line. As the fan's moving, the damper is going to go accordingly. That is just like your electromechanical, low speed versus high speed scenario, and that's minimal what you have to do. The curve, if you reference in the literature, minimum damper position curves. And you can see on there, there's different shapes if you look at the points, and that's inherent by the damper and how the airflow really works in mechanical machines. So a linear line is not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And so if you put in the more points, the better it's going to be. You're going to look at something like the graph shown in the literature, and you can see in there each point is there by reference. It's referenced by CCN point name, which you can then follow in the CCN interface and troubleshooting to validate that that curve is in there right. And you can see where you are at any point on the curve. That can be seen by hooking up CCN, troubleshooter, service tool, going in and looking at the vent curve CCN table. And it shows you nicely blocked out what the default curves are, what current curves you're running, what your current settings, and all those kinds of things. So if you really get into a bind, then you should be using that to help you. So again, you have to do at least 2 points. So it's the min at max fan point and speed 1 and damp 1. If you only want to do the 2 points, you do the max, and then you should do your ventilation speed. If you want to take it further and be more sophisticated, by all means, you can put in additional points here, and it'll just change the shape of that curve. So once you get all these points that you want set, then your economizer minimum position is set, and you're all done.